Captain Sarah Mitchell crouched behind the concrete barrier, her rifle pressed against her shoulder as bullets whined overhead. The sound of automatic weapons fire echoed through the narrow streets of the Afghan city, mixing with the distant rumble of armored vehicles. Dust and debris rained down from the crumbling buildings around her, and the acrid smell of gunpowder filled her nostrils. "Alpha Team, report your position," she spoke in her radio, keeping her voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. "We're pinned down 2 blocks north of your location, Captain," came the crackling response from Sergeant Rodriguez. "Heavy resistance from the compound. These aren't regular Taliban fighters." Sarah pressed herself closer to the wall as another burst of gunfire erupted from a building across the street. She had been leading special operations missions for 8 years, but this assignment felt different. The intelligence reports had been vague, mentioning only high-value targets in a supposedly abandoned industrial complex on the outskirts of Kandahar. What they had walked into was a carefully orchestrated ambush by some of the most skilled fighters she had ever encountered. The mission had started 3 days earlier at Forward Operating Base Chapman. Sarah had been called to a briefing room where she found herself sitting across from Commander James Harrison, a Navy SEAL with 20 years of experience and a reputation for never backing down from impossible missions. His weathered face bore the scars of countless operations, and his steel-gray eyes held the kind of intensity that came from seeing too much combat. "Captain Mitchell," Commander Harrison had begun, sliding a classified folder across the metal table. "We have a situation that requires your particular expertise." Sarah opened the folder and studied the satellite images inside. The photos showed a large compound surrounded by high walls, with several buildings that appeared to be warehouses or manufacturing facilities. Red circles marked various structures, and handwritten notes indicated guard positions and patrol routes. "What am I looking at, Commander?" she asked, examining the tactical markings on the images. "Intelligence suggests this facility is being used as a command center by a cell of high-ranking enemy operatives," Harrison explained, pointing to the largest building in the center of the compound. "We believe 3 senior commanders are using this location to coordinate attacks against coalition forces throughout the region." Sarah nodded, studying the defensive positions marked on the photographs. The compound was heavily fortified, with multiple entry points and numerous places where defenders could establish overlapping fields of fire. It would be a difficult target for any conventional assault. "What makes this mission special?" she asked, sensing there was more to the assignment than a standard raid. Commander Harrison leaned back in his chair and fixed her with a serious look. "These aren't ordinary fighters, Captain. Our sources indicate that the 3 commanders holed up in that compound are responsible for some of the most sophisticated attacks we've seen in this theater. They've managed to stay 1 step ahead of every operation we've launched against them." He pulled out another photograph, this one showing the aftermath of convoy attack. Burned vehicles were scattered across a desert road, and the devastation was complete. Sarah recognized the tactical precision of the ambush from the positioning of the destroyed trucks. "They hit a supply convoy last week using tactics that suggest military training at the highest level," Harrison continued. "Coordinated strikes, perfect timing, and an escape route that allowed them to vanish before our response teams could arrive. These commanders know what they're doing." Sarah studied the intelligence reports, noting the patterns of attacks and the increasing sophistication of the enemy's operations. Each incident showed a level of planning and execution that went far beyond the capabilities of typical insurgent fighters. "What's the recommended approach?" she asked, already formulating potential assault plans in her mind. "That's where things get complicated," Harrison said, his expression growing more serious. "We've run multiple scenarios through tactical planning, and every conventional approach results in unacceptable casualties. The compound is too well defended, and these commanders have shown they're willing to fight to the death rather than surrender." He pulled out a detailed map of the surrounding area, marked with approach routes and defensive positions. Red lines indicated zones where previous reconnaissance missions had encountered heavy resistance, and Yellow markers showed locations where coalition forces had taken casualties during earlier attempts to gather intelligence. Apache helicopters can't get close enough to provide effective support, Harrison explained. The compound has anti-aircraft weapons, and the surrounding terrain provides too many hiding spots for shoulder-fired missiles. We've lost 2 drones trying to get detailed reconnaissance of the interior. Sarah examined the tactical challenges presented by the target. The compound was situated in a valley surrounded by hills that provided natural defensive positions. Any approaching force would be exposed to fire from multiple directions, and the narrow access roads made it impossible to bring in heavy armor for support. "What about a night assault with air support?" she suggested, tracing possible approach routes on the map. "We considered that option," Harrison replied, shaking his head. "But these commanders have proven they're prepared for nighttime operations. Our intelligence indicates they've got night vision equipment and have positioned sentries to cover all likely approach routes." He leaned forward and pointed to a series of defensive positions marked around the compound's perimeter. "They've turned this place into a fortress, Captain. Every conventional tactical option we've examined leads to the same conclusion. We need overwhelming force to guarantee success, and even then, we'd likely suffer significant casualties." Sarah nodded, understanding the implications. In counterinsurgency operations, taking heavy casualties while attempting to eliminate enemy commanders could be counterproductive. The propaganda value of a failed assault might outweigh the strategic benefit of removing the targets. "So what's the mission?" she asked, closing the intelligence folder. Commander Harrison stood up and walked to a wall map showing the broader region. "We need someone who can get close to that compound without triggering their defenses. Someone who can operate independently and adapt to changing circumstances." He turned back to face her, and Sarah saw something in his expression that she recognized from her own experience leading difficult missions. It was the look of a commander who was about to ask one of his people to take on a task that pushed the boundaries of what was possible. "The mission is reconnaissance and target designation," Harrison said. "We need eyes on those 3 commanders, and we need precise locations so that follow-up operations can be planned accordingly. But, Captain, I want to be clear about something." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "That target is untouchable by any Apache. The defensive positions are too strong, the terrain is too difficult, and these commanders are too smart to be taken down by conventional air support. This mission will require a different approach." Sarah felt a familiar mixture of anticipation and concern. Throughout her career, she had built a reputation for successfully completing missions that other units had deemed impossible. Her background in special operations had taught her to think creatively about tactical problems and to find solutions that others might overlook. "What kind of timeline are we looking at?" she asked. 48 hours for preparation, then deployment," Harrison replied. "Our window of opportunity is narrow. Intelligence suggests the commanders are planning to move to a different location within the next week, so this may be our only chance to locate them." Sarah nodded, already beginning to formulate a plan. The mission would require careful preparation and precise execution, but she had faced similar challenges before. The key would be finding a way to approach the target without alerting the sophisticated defensive network that the enemy commanders had established. "I'll need to review the detailed intelligence reports and conduct additional reconnaissance," she said. "And I'll need a team that can operate independently if the situation requires it." "You'll have access to everything we've gathered," Harrison assured her. "But, Captain, I want you to understand the risks involved. These commanders have shown they're willing to use extreme measures to protect themselves. The intelligence suggests they've booby-trapped the compound and established multiple fallback positions." Sarah stood up and gathered the classified materials. "Understood, Commander. I'll begin preparations immediately." As she left the briefing room, Sarah felt the weight of responsibility that came with every special operations mission. The success of the operation would depend on her ability to overcome defensive measures that had stymied previous attempts. But, More importantly, the intelligence gathered during this mission could potentially save the lives of coalition forces throughout the region. Over the next 2 days, Sarah immersed herself in mission planning. She studied satellite imagery, reviewed intercepted communications, and analyzed the patterns of enemy activity around the compound. The more she learned about the target, the more she understood why conventional approaches had failed. The 3 enemy commanders had chosen their position carefully. The compound was located at a strategic crossroads that allowed them to monitor coalition movements while maintaining multiple escape routes. The surrounding terrain provided natural defensive advantages, and the urban environment nearby offered opportunity for the commanders to blend in with the civilian population if they needed to evacuate. Sarah's team consisted of 4 experienced operators, each with specialized skills that would be essential for the mission. Sergeant Rodriguez was an expert in urban warfare and close-quarters combat. Staff Sergeant Chen specialized in communications and electronic warfare. Corporal Williams was a sniper with extensive experience in reconnaissance missions. And Sergeant Thompson was a demolitions expert who could handle any explosive devices they might encounter. During the final briefing before deployment, Sarah outlined the mission parameters to her team. "Our primary objective is intelligence gathering," she explained, pointing to aerial photographs of the compound. "We need to confirm the presence of the 3 commanders and gather detailed information about their security measures." She traced the planned approach route on the map, showing how they would infiltrate the area under cover of darkness and establish observation positions around the compound. "This is not an assault mission," she emphasized. "We go in quiet, gather the intelligence we need, and get out without being detected." Sergeant Rodriguez studied the defensive positions marked on the photographs. "Captain, what's our extraction plan if things go wrong?" Sarah pointed to several rally points she had identified during her planning. "We have multiple fallback positions and extraction routes. But the key to this mission is avoiding detection in the first place. These commanders have proven they're smart and well-prepared, so we need to be smarter." The team spent the remainder of the briefing reviewing contingency plans and communication protocols. Each member understood their role in the operation and the importance of maintaining operational security throughout the mission. As they prepared to deploy, Sarah felt the familiar combination of confidence and caution that had kept her alive through 8 years of special operations. The mission ahead would test every skill she had developed and would require the kind of tactical thinking that separated successful operators from those who didn't come home. The helicopter insertion went smoothly, with the team landing several kilometers from the target under cover of darkness. They moved through the rough terrain carefully, using night vision equipment to navigate around defensive positions that the enemy had established along likely approach routes. As they got closer to the compound, Sarah could see why previous reconnaissance efforts had failed. The enemy commanders had established a defensive network that extended far beyond the compound walls. Concealed observation posts monitored all the main roads, and roving patrols covered the areas between fixed positions. "Alpha Team, hold position," Sarah whispered into her radio as she spotted a 2-man patrol moving along a ridge line about 300 meters away. "We have movement to the north." The team remained motionless as the enemy patrol passed by their position. Sarah noted the disciplined movement and professional equipment of the fighters, confirming the intelligence reports about the high level of training among the enemy forces. After the patrol had moved out of sight, the team continued their approach toward the compound. Sarah could see lights in several of the buildings, and the amount of activity suggested that the facility was serving as more than just a hiding place for the 3 commanders. As they reached their planned observation position, Sarah realized that the mission had become more complicated than anyone had anticipated. The compound was not just a safe house for enemy commanders. It was an active command center coordinating operations throughout the region. Through her binoculars, she could see fighters moving between buildings, vehicles arriving and departing, and communication equipment being operated from the main facility. The level of activity indicated that disrupting this location could have a significant impact on enemy operations in the entire area. "Captain, we're getting radio intercept from inside the compound," Staff Sergeant Shun reported quietly. These communications are definitely from high-level commanders coordinating with multiple cells. Sarah studied the compound through her scope, counting personnel and noting the positions of guards and defensive emplacements. The intelligence that brought them here had been accurate. This was indeed a critical node in the enemy's command structure. But as she watched the movements around the compound, Sarah began to realize that this mission would require more than reconnaissance. The opportunity to disrupt such an important enemy facility might not come again, and the intelligence they were gathering suggested that waiting for a larger operation might allow the commanders to escape. The sound of approaching vehicles interrupted her observations. Through the darkness, she could see a convoy of trucks moving toward the compound, their headlights cutting through the night as they navigated the rough access road. "Alpha Team, we have incoming vehicles," she reported to her team. "Count 3 trucks, possible reinforcements." As the convoy reached the compound, Sarah watched through her binoculars as the vehicles disgorged additional fighters. The new arrivals moved with the same disciplined precision she had observed in the earlier patrol, and their equipment suggested they were part of the same well-trained unit. The arrival of reinforcements complicated the tactical situation significantly. What had been planned as a reconnaissance mission was now revealing a much larger enemy presence than intelligence had indicated. Sarah realized that the mission parameters were changing